Okay, so I'm really happy to have on the podcast today Odette Jansen. She's the head of UX research at Nordhealth. We've been trying to do this for a while, so I'm really happy to have you on it finally.
Thanks. I'm really excited to do this.
Thank you. I'm excited too. I've been following your stuff on LinkedIn for a while, which is usually the case for my podcast guests. So, but in this case, like I love the stuff that you create. I even use one of your templates. I think that's actually how we got in contact. That I use one of your templates in one of my articles, and then the friendship, let's say the virtual friendship blossom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah, that was indeed the case. Yeah,
I think I forgot to
think
give you the credits, so I'm sorry.
Yes.
You don't hate me, so that's good.
No.
Well, I hope not. So could you give like a brief introduction as to obviously who you are, what you do now, and maybe also a little bit of an introduction into how you got into UX?
Yeah. So yeah, like you said, I am the head of UX research at Nordhealth. Nordhealth is a company located in Finland, and they make digital products for health tech, basically.
Cool.
I've been there now for 2 years. I started as the lead 2 years ago, and have recently been promoted to head of UX research. And in the last 2 years, thank you. In the last 2 years, I've been working on basically building the UX research department because it did not exist when I started.
Oh, wow.
I worked on making sure UX research got implemented into the product design cycle, built the team, the processes, the strategies, the roadmap,
So it's
the
your
methodologies. It is my baby. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And how I got into UX. So 2008, I think I finished high school and I had to make a decision on what to do next.
Yeah.
And everywhere around me, people kept saying like, "Oh, do something in economics because, that makes money. That's where you make
Boring.
money." And
I'm sorry if anyone's listening.
No.
Loves economics, but not for me.
But young, impressionable, I thought, okay, well, I guess that's what I'm going to do. And I think I did that for 3 months. And the only exam I passed was my IT exam. And it was also the only one I hadn't studied for. So I quit my study and I went back home to my parents and I was like, I can't do this. This is boring. I don't want to do anything in economics. I want to do something creative. I want to do something fun.
Yeah.
And I actually wanted to go into games. But that was a big no because who makes money in games? And
that's true.
Granted, difficult industry.
I saw gaming. Is it in your title on LinkedIn that there's gaming or something like it? Maybe you'll touch on that later, but yeah.
Yeah. It's part of my my origin story.
Okay. That's cool.
So I was like, okay, maybe not games. It's a hard industry, and can you really make money? And back in 2008, that was the question: can you make money with games? But I really like being creative, and so I decided to study media design.
Oh wow!
And while doing that, I got super into UX. It was actually one of the bigger topics that they taught. And then I learned that you could do UX in games. And that instead of entertainment games, you could also make games for healthcare. And so that's sort of how my things got together. So I focused a lot on game UX for health tech.
But was it just a passion, like that you liked healthcare, health tech, or was there like, a reason why you went into that?
So a little bit. So I'm a huge nerd. On the podcast, you can't see this behind me because it's just my voice, but there's games, there's D&D books.
That's cool.
I love games. I love the creativity from it.
Yeah.
But what I also am really passionate about is mental health and how people develop, how people feel, and that sort of came together while doing my studies.
Wow.
So.
That's cool. What type of games, out of curiosity? Is it like video games or board games or
Both?
Just any sort of game?
Just any game, yeah.
No, just because I love board games. Like we have like a ton of them here. The latest one, the one we're doing is a Wingspan. I don't know if you've.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Super complex to set up, but we were still yet to like finish a game. So, but hopefully one day we'll. I'm also a big football fan, so a big Football Manager fan. So any sort of complex game, I'm into.
Funny. Yeah, so I worked for the competition called Online Soccer Manager.
Ah, really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think, okay, Online Soccer Manager, because it's a Dutch platform. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I had a few teams on there for a while. But yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Excellent. So we're going off a bit of a tangent now. So what is it about UX, apart from obviously what you've mentioned so far, that like made you really say, yeah, this is what I want to do, apart from the things you mentioned now?
Yeah, so I think for me, one of the things that I always struggled with was trying to fit in and understand myself and understand why I didn't fit in with certain groups. And so I read a lot of psychology books, body
Mm,
language books throughout my years. And I learned that while studying UX and while working in UX, that that was actually a really big part of it. And the fact
mm,
that I had done so much self-studying on these topics that I found interesting was actually really
mm.
useful in UX. So it sort of just came, yeah, sort of naturally by reading, by finding out along the way,
Yeah,
learning that that was UX and that I could use this people
mm,
knowledge,
that's
yeah,
cool.
as work. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing. Obviously, everyone faces challenges all the way through their career, but I would say probably especially at the beginning of their careers. What were some of the challenges that you faced, whether it be entering UX or the studies or just anything? What were those challenges, and how did you overcome them, or what was the advice that helped you?
I think the study in itself wasn't complicated. I was really enjoying it, the creativity, and I had finally found something that I could put my all in. And
Mm,
so the study wasn't hard. I think the transition afterwards to work was difficult because you
right.
go from this safe environment where you get to explore and take your time and
Mm,
fail to suddenly this sort of high pressure environment in which you have to
yeah.
perform. And so I think that was one of the bigger challenges is that I personally am very stress prone.
Mhm.
This comes from, I mean, people that follow me on LinkedIn know that I'm autistic. And so for
Yeah.
me, one of my autistic traits is that I'm very quickly too stressed.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of coping mechanisms for it that work, but
Yeah.
I only found out I was autistic 3 years ago. So when I
Oh
started
wow.
my
Okay.
career,
So it's
which was 2012, I
mm,
had no clue. And so there was all this
wow.
pressure and all this stress to perform.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the major thing. All these people wanting things, needing things,
Yeah.
deadlines, and yeah,
It can be very high. Yeah. Very high, like a high pressure environment is the right word.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I fully understand that. Like I get really stressed. I have my own like issues, like anxiety, things like that. It is a word that many people use, but it is something that like different types of anxiety, social anxiety, which as a UX researcher can be a challenge. You need to
Yes.
be quite social. So yeah, like you say, learning those coping mechanisms that can help you as well. But what were some of the things that you would say now, like maybe some of these coping mechanisms, because maybe there are people listening that are also like you, like us, that struggle with stress or the pressure of meeting deadlines, things like that. What are some of the things that helps you to deal with that pressure and that stress? If you feel like
Yeah,
sharing, obviously.
no, absolutely. I love talking about my autism and how I deal with it. And I think it's a
Mm,
very important topic that more
absolutely.
people should feel comfortable talking about.
Sure. Yeah.
So for me, I think it's twofold. The one part of my coping mechanism is the fact that I know that I'm autistic
Yeah.
and I know how that works for me. And I think, especially in the last 3 years, I've done a lot of work on figuring out how things work for me and
Mm,
how things affect me, what
yeah.
situations I'm better in, and how to train for others. So, like you said, you're a UX researcher, you need to be social. And so, for when I do interviews, I'm over prepared. I know
Yeah.
exactly how to do it, what topics to touch upon, and
Yeah.
it becomes this learned script that makes it easier.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one, and the other one is actually something that I've, funnily enough, touched upon in my graduation in 2012, which was a project for health tech, which was about how to reduce stress in early starters on the market, and that became a game.
Oh,
Um,
wow, that's cool.
and and the method that was used in that game was mindfulness, because my
Mm,
then thesis advisor said to me, "Hey, you should look into this."
mm,
Now we're 13, 14 years later, and my therapist brought that to me about a year ago and said, you should
Oh.
work on mindfulness. And so I've actually, back then, I don't think I fully grasped what it meant and how it could
Mm,
help for me because it was
yeah.
a project. But now, it's breathing exercises
Mm,
and posture and taking a walk and just that can actually help me reduce the stress and also more easily recognize when stress is appearing in my body.
yeah, yeah. No, that's a really good one. That's something that I do a lot is taking a walk. I always try to have like in the afternoon, 15 minutes, 20 minutes where I just go out, have a walk, look at something different. Also, obviously to get away from the screen, but just kind of also just to put perspective on like the stresses that you're dealing with. Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's a job and you do have deadlines to meet, but obviously there's a world out there, there's other things that can yeah just take your mind and relax your mind. So I'm sure there's many other things that help you as well, but we don't have that much time to go into all of them. But thanks for sharing those, and I hope like people who are listening that maybe it gives them an idea or something to help them too. Is there anything like looking back on your career so far, so from when you decided UX was for you all the way up until now, that you head of UX research at Nordhealth, is there anything that you would do differently that now you look back and think, I wouldn't have done it that way, or maybe I should have done this instead?
I think that's such a hard question
Yeah.
because when I look back, I like to look at it as an opportunity to do better in the future
Mm. Okay.
because I am where I am now because of everything that I did in
Yeah,
the past, right? All the
that's
mistakes that
true.
I've made and all the good things that I did have led me to now being head of UX research. I think the
Yeah.
one thing that would have been important for me and that I learned maybe a bit late is
Mm.
to actually stand up for myself more. It is still tech and games in particular is a very male-oriented world,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
being a petite woman in a men's world is hasn't been the greatest
Yeah.
experience. And I think that I should have stood up for myself more because no one
Okay.
else did.
Yeah.
So I think, if I would say something like, what would you do differently? And also more of like advice to people
Mm.
experiencing that is to stand up for themselves, say something about it. There is only
Mm.
one you and no one else is going to protect you but you.
That's true.
So I think that would be the main thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think that as well comes down with confidence as well, because like especially early on in your career, maybe you don't have that full confidence in your
Yeah.
abilities or can I say this? Can I like put my foot down and like fight for this idea or this yeah, this
Yeah.
solution or whatever.
And it's so
Oh,
funny you say that because when I work now with juniors and they stand up to me or they voice their ideas, I find it so refreshing.
yeah,
It's so great because, I do things my way and I think they're the greatest.
yeah,
But they're also the way I do
yeah,
things, right? And so having other people come up to me and be like, you know what, I want to do it in this
yeah,
way is really great because you can
yeah,
actually learn something from other people again. And
exactly.
so besides the fact that, yeah, you need to build that confidence, I think it's also just just do it.
Yeah,
Just try it and see what works. If your
yeah.
company or the people that you work with don't react nicely or like
Mm.
cooperatively, then I also don't think it's the best place to
No,
work.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. Because yeah, experience is one thing, and obviously it's needed because you do. The more you do things, the more like the more accomplished you become at them. But it's also nice sometimes to have like a fresh pair of eyes, a fresh
Yeah,
mind that is new to it, and obviously it's coming in at this stage in the stream of time that things are different to maybe when you entered the field. So it's also nice to,
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
you say, listen to other people's viewpoints, and it helps you grow, and it also helps them to feel more like to grow in that confidence as well, to stand up for, yeah, this is right. They will always be right, like you and I will not always be right. So it's
Yeah.
a part of that team mentality and helping each other out. So that's really cool. Again, thanks for sharing. You touched on it before, obviously, around your autism and the things that you do now to help in that sphere. What are for you that you've noticed? What are some of the challenges that people, just in general, neurodivergent people or people that view the world, feel the world in a different way to other people? What are some of the challenges that you've noticed, especially in UX, for for these sorts of people?
Yeah, I think the biggest one, and I think many neurodivergent people will agree with me, is the stigma that
Yeah.
people have about neurodivergence. When I tell people I'm autistic, they go, "No, you're
Yeah.
autistic, but you're
Yeah.
social." And it is so demeaning because
Yeah.
I've been masking my entire life. I've been
Yeah.
taught this is how you interact with people.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so I do my best to fit in, to be normal. And so,
Yeah.
when you tell people you're autistic and they sort of dismiss it,
Yeah.
it becomes really hard to make it clear how and what it means for you.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
sure. I can talk to people. I'm going
Mm.
to lie in bed after this because I will be exhausted. But
Yeah.
that's the part that people
I'm
don't see,
sorry.
right? They just, no, 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 no need to apologize. Right? But I don't choose
Mm.
to be social. I have to put that up and I have
Yeah.
to work for that. And then I know
Sure.
what it's going to do for me. But what
Yeah.
it's doing for me is not what people see.
Yeah.
What people think about autism is Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory.
Yeah.
It's the classic white male that likes
Yes.
trains and math and
Yeah.
not the sort of bubbly woman that I often
Yeah.
am.
Because also
So
there's different spectrums on the
yeah,
autistic spectrum. It's the wrong way around with my
yeah,
words, but yeah, there's obviously, as you know, like I've spoke about it, I have family members who are autistic as well, and they're different in their own rights. Like
yeah.
they have challenges in different things, and like you say, it's not always the stereotype: loves trains, good
Yeah.
at maths, all that sort of thing. But like
But
they live like yeah,
people so easily go to that stereotype
yeah,
because that's what they think it is, and they
yeah,
don't really ask, oh, but what does that mean for you?
yeah,
Right? If they would
exactly.
just ask, if people would just ask, okay,
Yeah,
what does that mean for you? And how
yeah,
can I best support you? Or do we need
exactly.
to make changes? That would
Yeah.
make the world a difference.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. No, no, that's something that I've noticed. Just obviously being a part of a family with, yeah, with autistic members. Yeah, like the stigma that comes along with that, and people just like pigeonhole them and say, okay, you're
Yeah.
autistic, so that means you do that, you think this, etc. Without obviously ever really understanding. You can never fully understand how someone lives in their world.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it's a good thing that you brought up. And is it something that you feel UX, like, I don't know, apart from like the stigma, do you think there could be more support, like within the UX like world, around supporting people who live the world in a different way,
Yeah,
whether it come from
absolutely.
education?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think what we've seen when COVID happened and we had to suddenly work from home was
yeah,
that we actually gave a lot more opportunities to neurodivergent people to
yeah,
work and to actually do great work as well. And now what you also see happening you see it on LinkedIn a lot is that,
mm,
the return to office mandates are
yeah,
happening and we're being forced to go back into offices, and a lot of
yeah,
neurodivergent people cannot function properly in a 9 to 5 40-hour work week in
no,
an office.
yeah,
But it's a shame that we don't think about that. The
mm,
companies think about themselves
yeah,
and not
and
about
money.
the people and how they yeah and not about how they can best support their people. I think
Yeah,
what's nice is, especially where I currently work, yes, we get to work remotely from home, but I think what it does is it also allows for the people that work there to have more honest conversations about how do you
mm,
work best.
yeah,
We always have these conversations with each other, like, hey, what are the best times of day that I can bother you?
mm,
Do you
that's
prefer
nice.
a call or Slack messages and stuff? And it
Yeah,
just creates a really nice open way of
that's
communication,
nice. Yeah,
regardless of being
yeah.
neurodivergent or not.
Not exactly, because sometimes people just have certain preferences based on
Yeah.
their personality. I'm quite an introverted person. I tend to shy away from large interactions groups, big Zoom meetings, hate them. So
Same.
for me, like the best for me, I prefer Slack messages, but even like audio record or voice clips, whatever they call them. Giving my
Yeah.
age away now. Like voice clips, things like that on Slack. That's what I prefer, because if I say something wrong halfway through because I'm a perfectionist, I can like delete it, start again. And that's my way to communicate. Everyone has their way. So yeah, I think being open to that and accepting, and like you say, I think that's a nice thing that you mentioned, that your team has this kind of open kind of understanding with each other, like when can I bother you, when's a good time not to contact you, what do you prefer. I think that's really nice and something we can all like think about when we're dealing with colleagues or even like our users, especially working in UX, like we're supposed to be promoting user experience. And
Yeah.
if we're not considering the experience of our colleagues, then like what are we doing? So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
a
I think
nice
that's
point.
a great one that you mentioned, that the experience of the colleagues, of the people that
Yeah.
you work with. Yeah.
Yeah, we're advocating for our users, but what about our colleagues if we're
Yeah,
ignoring?
because we're also users, right?
Exactly,
Of the
exactly,
company, of the tools, of the people. Yeah.
exactly. That's really cool. Again, thanks for highlighting those things. And what are some of the things that you're doing? Like in because obviously, like you say, you found out 3 years ago that you do have autism. What are some of the things that you've been able to do in the community? Obviously, I see what you do, but I'll give you the platform to talk about it.
Thanks. I think so when I found out 3 years ago, it was not so much a shock because I've been researching for like 5 years. Like, is this the
Okay,
thing that I have?
is this me?
Um, yeah, is this me? Am I finally going to figure out why I'm different?
Yeah.
And so when I finally got that label, let's call it a label, for me it was like partially a shock because oh now it's real. And on the other
Mm.
end, it was like, okay, yeah, it makes sense because,
Yeah.
I kind of knew this was it.
Yeah.
And it took me some time to be confident speaking about it. I had a colleague
Mm.
back then who was also autistic,
Okay.
and talking with them, it actually made it a lot easier for me to voice, like, okay, how does stuff work for me
Mm.
and what do and don't I appreciate? And then, of course, therapy.
Yeah.
I think I only started talking on LinkedIn maybe a year ago when I
Okay.
was like, I'm going to do this because this
Yeah.
is who I am and I don't want to
Yeah.
hide the way I work because
No.
I do great work in
Of
UX. I
course.
do
Yeah.
great work in health tech.
Yeah. It's absolutely
Um,
nothing to be ashamed of. Like it's your way to live and experience the world, and it's a way that I want to experience. So it's another viewpoint on life. So I always find
yeah.
it enriches life. Like seeing my family members that have autism. Like I I learned probably more from them as they did from me. So like yeah, I think promoting that. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but yeah, I think
No, no,
promoting that
it's
is
okay.
something important.
I think it's if we were all the same people working in a team, then there would be no way to innovate. All the
Exactly.
products would be the same, they would all work the same, but
Yeah.
because you have people that think differently, and whether they have autism or
Mm.
ADHD or just think differently,
Yeah.
then that can help your product. It can help the way we look at research
Hmm.
because we don't always have to do an interview in this specific way. There
No.
are other ways that we can get the right findings that we need with
Mm.
other methods, and we can
Yeah.
innovate those methods.
Yes.
Because just because we're neurodivergent, there's also our users. They aren't
Absolutely.
all neurotypical. They're
Yeah.
going to be dyslexic and autistic
Yeah.
or super old and not good with tech
Or
you know
colorblind or
or colorblind. Yeah,
yeah.
and I think it's good to talk about this and to make sure that it's known and that people
Yeah.
are different and that we
Yeah.
just need to learn from each other and we can use that
Yeah.
to everyone's benefit.
Exactly. Exactly. Because yeah, it's when you are researching or designing, you end up just focusing on the atypical user or person. But like you
Yeah.
say, that there's a long list of people that deal with different things, and they need to be considered in the things that we design and the things, obviously, what you research. So yeah, like it's a really nice point. So maybe I don't want again. I don't want to take all your time, and I know that you'll need to lie down, so I don't want to stress you out too much. So we'll come towards the end now of the recording. But what advice would you like to share? So obviously, most of the listeners, from what I know, are people who are entering the UX field, or they're juniors, or they're early on in their career. Do you have any advice? Maybe it can be some advice that someone gave you in the past that really helped you, or just some advice from yourself for those ones, whether it be how to enter the field, CV, interviews, whatever. I know there's a typical list that people have, but just anything that you would like to share.
Yeah, and it's a quite a broad list as well,
Yeah,
because I
exactly.
think,
I know. So I'm
depending
sorry.
on whether we're talking about portfolios or job interviews, the advice is going to
We'll
be
be here for
super
like 4
different.
hours, so I'll leave you to choose what you would like to touch on.
I think I think one of my main things that I always say to like the juniors and the people that I mentor is to just never close your mind off to learning new things and to other people. I think it's so important that we keep developing and we keep learning, we keep innovating on methods on and fitting it to our users. And you work with different users along the whatever works today might not work tomorrow. And so continuing learning and finding people to learn from, finding, people on LinkedIn that you can connect with that work in different fields like you and I, and learn from each other. I think that is so important to do. And the other thing, I actually learned this later in my master's, is that when we do research and we do it well, we go to the nitty gritty, find all the details, and we can get so stuck, tunnel vision on all those details, right? One of the things that I learned there from my master's is to always triangulate your data. And there are so many cool ways in which you can triangulate with another researcher, with another designer, even with PMs, to just get a set of fresh eyes on what you're looking at. Because someone else may suddenly see something different that your tunnel vision and that your research bias missed.
No, that's a really good point. It's actually on the last episode I recorded with Emma Craig. She's at Miro, and that was something that she mentioned, that she, looking back, she said that she wished she'd like leveraged more the knowledge of her team. She said it's something that she does now, but leveraging the knowledge and the viewpoints of your team members by going over the research with them, and like you say, it helps you come out of your tunnel vision that you can sometimes get in, because sometimes you end up sitting on data for days on end and you're just going through it like a rabbit in a hole. And then sometimes you end up thinking, oh yeah, I found all the points, or I found all the pain points, or all the ideas from the user, the viewpoints from the user. That then someone else looks at it, and after like literally 30 seconds, they find something or notice something you've completely missed. So it's something that I try to do, is sit down with like different PMs, if there are multiple PMs, the designers, even engineers, like just get different eyes on your research, even if it's just going through the report. And they might say, oh, did they say that? Or did anyone mention that? Or did this come up? And then you're, oh yeah, it did actually. And then it kind of opens up a different thing for you to discover. So yeah, thanks.
And I think you can do that in two ways as well, right? Because you can definitely do it within the team, which I think is great, and it also gives you the addition of them being more invested in the research and its insights. But the other thing that I also mean with the triangulation is to do it sometimes outside of the company, also with another researcher, right? Because they are not connected to that product, they are not invested in that product, so they can actually look from a research perspective on how you did your thematic analysis, for example, and see like, hey, you missed something here. I think it's also really good to sometimes do that with people outside of your
That's a good idea. Yeah, now you give me an idea to pester you with. I will, don't worry. No, it's a really nice point. So thanks for sharing that advice, and as well, thanks for your time and for touching on these topics. It's been an eye opener for me, and in the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes, I've learned a lot. And you're really lovely to talk to. So thank you for your time and for sharing this advice. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
No problem at all. No problem. Maybe we get you back on in the future.